Kamala Harris has discovered that it's okay to do interviews. Now, most of them are incredibly soft. Some of them are kind of soft. But I want to ask, before we get into The View and 60 Minutes and Howard Stern and Colbert, why is she doing this now? I thought she was winning.
Clearly, there's been some bad news in the internal polling. And while today there was a New York Times Siena poll that showed her 3 points up in the national vote over Donald Trump, that's only anecdotal. What she needs to do is get up above him by some significant margin in the swing states, and it just isn't happening. And just as that New York Times Siena poll hits, another YouGov poll hit as well, saying that Trump is up. So what it tells me is that something told her in the internal polling it's not going well, and she needed a strategy shift. Otherwise, she would not be changing strategy with 30 days to go until the election. You only do that if you expect to lose. So she has seen something that we haven't seen that probably is rather dramatic, because they are taking a huge risk putting her out, and also her buddy Governor Pinocchio, who can't go 2 minutes without telling another lie. So we'll see whether it changes her numbers at all, but it's really late in the game to be making this big a shift.
Yeah, there's also, as you know, a couple of state polls that have popped up tonight, which is starting to show Trump in front in the places that are considered to be the absolute must beginning of the win, blue wall states of Michigan, Wisconsin and in Pennsylvania. Now, about the actual interviews, I heard what you had to say today, that the 60 Minutes conversation was the more polite of the conversations that 60 Minutes would normally have with a political candidate. But at the very least, there was some pushback. And even then, she fumbles the ball.
I mean, I give Bill Whitaker credit for at least trying on immigration, but net, he wound up the thinnest kid at fat camp. Like, it's not really a great accomplishment. That was it. That's really, he pressed her on the economy a little, and he pressed her legitimately on immigration. So good. And on every other exchange, he fell down on the job. I mean, he had questions like, you say, based on the following 3 or 4 things, that Trump is a racist. Go on. It was like, what? It was so obvious, right? And then in the 60 Minutes extra, which is the outtakes that didn't, and just some of them, not all of them, God forbid they show us the whole thing because she'd look like a drooling mess. They, of course, cleaned up her transcript. But in some of the outtakes that they posted, he does get into the coup, right? That Joe Biden went down and she was elevated and she took over this role. And I'm like, great. This is where he's going to ask her about the fact that this, A, has been utterly undemocratic, and B, resulted after she lied to us all for years about his mental acuity. What did she know? When did she know it? Why did she look us in the eye and tell us that he was absolutely fine, when we both have her on the record now and him on the record saying they made every decision together. They did every law together. She was an integral part of all of the big administration decisions. So she was with him. She was with him a lot. So she would have seen. No, it wasn't asked. He didn't touch on it. All he asked was, well, do you think that's why people feel like they don't know you? Because there wasn't a more robust process behind your elevation. Oh my, what a fail. And it was just time and time again where she started giving answers like she was at a deposition. Now, I'm a lawyer. She's a lawyer. And these answers, to me, at first sounded normal, because I spent 10 years taking depositions and doing cross-examinations. And when someone says, I'm not going to answer a hypothetical, that's a totally normal, common answer in a deposition, where you're across from an adversary who hates you and is suing you or your client. This is not a deposition. It is an interview in which she is asking us, on whose behalf the questioner is there, to hire her for the most important job in the world. I won't answer a hypothetical is an absurd answer. Yeah. And you know where she invoked it? Every single time it was foreign policy, because she's a know-nothing. She didn't know what to say when he asked her about China, when he asked her about Ukraine. She danced and danced and danced. She didn't know what to say when he asked her about Israel. Like every major conflict, she seemed completely flat-footed and a little clueless, like she was waiting for someone in her special little ear pods to give her the answer. I realize this is an internet conspiracy theory, but it's kind of a fun one. And the answer didn't come, so she just went with, Hypothetical. I'm not going to answer a hypothetical. Well, guess what? We're entitled to the answer. She didn't give it. We used to ask that question all the time in presidential debates. Totally fair game. She didn't answer because she can't.
But also, any promise you make in an election is hypothetical about your capacity to deliver it. And when she gets pushed on, well, how are you going to do it? Of course, she ends up going to water. By the way, if you want to know anyone that Megyn Kelly has ever done a deposition on, they're currently still in the fetal position and crying. In 50 states, there you can find them all. Now, on some of the softer stuff, right?
I'll tell you a quick story, Paul. I'll tell you a quick story when I was taking my depositions. And it would 9 times out of 10 it would be a man I was opposed from, on opposing counsel. And they would start to get aggravated, whatever I was doing, whether I was doing the questioning or whether I was doing the defending. And instead of getting progressively upset like I would when I was a very young attorney, when I got older, I learned to go the other way and to get calmer and to look at these guys and just say, you seem upset. Do you need a break? Do you need to step outside? Come back after you've collected yourself. It was so fun. It used to drive them insane. Oh, I miss that.
Oh, just turn into the ice cold steamroller. Fantastic. Now, on some of the softer interviews, now we know why all of this is there. It's for her to seem more likeable than she actually is. It's not about an intelligence test. But she even then stuffs it up. On The View, she's asked by the most left-wing host, is there anything you would do different than Joe Biden's done in the past 4 years? Her answer, no. So now she doubles down and she owns every mistake and the very reason why people wanted to punt him by 10 points.
Her campaign slogan is, we can't go back. That's her whole campaign slogan. We can't go back. And the reason the New York Times reported today that it showed her making a little bit of headway on its poll, which a month ago had Trump up 1, but now has her up 3, so it's a 4-point swing in her favor, is because the voters are starting to see her as the change candidate.
Please. As
the one who will bring real change to the policies of the past few years. What does she do? She goes out and says, I'm exactly like Joe Biden. Everything he did, I was a part of, I blessed, I worked on. Yes, I see no difference between us other than his name is Joe Biden and mine isn't. I mean, that's really how she answered the question. You almost have to feel for her campaign staff, which is in the back room going like, oh my God, does anyone have any bourbon? And then, of course, they're like, it's in Kamala's purse. It's right over there.